Ladies, gentlemen, boys and girls, and all who fall between or outside of that spectrum, it is finally time. I can now say I've been around making content long enough that I finally get to cover a mainline FNaF game. And despite it being a relatively shorter experience than the past few games, there is still plenty to go over. And I am glad this is my first mainline game on this channel, because it is such a gut-wrenching and amazing game that had me on the edge of my seat pretty much the whole time. I went into Secret of the Mimic very concerned for what I just spent $60 on. There had been little to no marketing in the days leading up to its release, and the game launched with literally no announcement. But once I got my hands on it and played through the game on stream, all my worries were quickly dispelled. But in its place, I began to see a lot of glaring issues that seemed to just plague the whole Steelwool era of FNaF. But even with that said, Steelwool has once again provided peak fiction right to my doorstep, so I really don't want to waste any more time on building this up. So let's jump right into Five Nights at Freddy's Secret of the Mimic. But first, we have channel memberships now, which allow you to get early access to videos, a shiny role in the Discord, and a few other little perks, all for just $5 AUD. And by becoming a member, you can directly support me and the channel. And I'd like to personally thank my first channel member, Aerostatic, for reminding me that I set this up like 6 months ago and just forgot to tell anyone about it. Now, onto the video.
Hey buddy, this is Dispatch with FNaF Entertainment. How are you feeling?
The game opens by introducing us to our protagonist, Arnold, a sleep-deprived technician working for Fazbear, who, after a 36-hour shift, just wants to go home. But once Fazbear's dispatch calls him and tells him to go towards Murray's Costume Manor to collect their property, even offering a $25 bonus for his troubles. How much was $25 in 1979? 110 bucks? Yeah bro, this ain't worth it. This ain't worth a turnaround, go home. However, Arnold promptly says, sure. Not because he wants to, because Fazbear will just repo his truck and dock his pay if he doesn't. Once we arrive at the MCM facility, we're provided with a data driver, which immediately tells you there's not going to be a lot of interesting gameplay here. Now, that may sound like I'm about to go rip into the data driver and how uninspired it is and how it's a walking simulator, but I actually don't mind this being the main mechanic. I've always liked games such as Resident Evil or My Friendly Neighborhood, mainly for their level designs and how everything is interconnected, allowing you to get new keycards and keys to just unlock areas from the start of the game that causes a whole domino effect of new areas. And that being the main mechanic of this game is just like injecting dopamine straight into my veins every time we upgrade our access. I just love this stuff. Exploring outside the factory, we find a house on the hill which looks vaguely familiar. I'm not sure, I can't really put my finger on it. And a Fazbear truck parked off to the side, covered in blood. I'm sure they're fine. We then approach the main entrance, only to be told by the man himself, Edwin, that the facility is temporarily closed and to use a side door, which leads us to this really charming show where all of Edwin's creations do a little song and dance, where we're introduced to Mrs. and Mr. Helpful. And it's clear just from Edwin's dialogue that he's so passionate about his craft. And I can respect that, and it's really good characterization. The show then quickly breaks apart and we enter the warehouse via a side door. And I need to talk about this here because I just really love the environments of this game. Steelwool has managed to make multiple environments in this game where I'm just taken aback by how cool they are. I feel like I could just spend hours roaming around this factory, looking at all the costumes and animatronics, just seeing how the suits are made and how they function. Going from just shells with really nothing on them to usable suits and having so much life in them. And that fact alone that these things look like they could jump out at you in any second really helps sell the idea that the Mimic could be hiding anywhere, ready to activate and attack you at any moment. There's something about the environments in this game that just speaks to me in ways I can't describe. It's like being a kid in a candy store, okay? I just love looking around this place, it's so cool. We then activate a generator by pulling our mouse forward and backwards, a mechanic that's created some fantastic gifs in the last few days, like thank you Steelwool, this is what I needed in my life.
Do you think he'll hear me if I start cranking it right behind him?
And we enter the security office, where Dispatch finally tells Arnold, oh yeah, there's a killer robot on the loose that can literally become any costume or animatronic you walk past or interact with. Sorry dude, no way out now, good luck. Now, my main issue with Arnold here is that bro does not speak up for himself. In the intro segment, I found Arnold to be really likable, especially with his slight pushback against Fazbear and his just done with this shit attitude. But it barely, if ever, comes up again, and I wish he did because he again barely has any speaking lines, and most of them aren't even to Dispatch. Which, speaking of, Dispatch directs us to upgrade our data driver and turn on the power. And we get our first look to what happened to the previous technicians Fazbear sent to the MCM facility, as we find a costume surrounded by flies with an arm wearing the same uniform as Arnold sticking out, belonging to Team 12. And unfortunately, this isn't the only body we're gonna find down here. Once we're finished restoring the power, we get our first glimpse of the Mimic out the corner of our eye. And when we walk out, we see that the elephant costume sat just outside the room has disappeared, meaning that the Mimic has either been watching us from the start or is intentionally trying to make us feel paranoid. And goddamn does this work. We then collect a hand crank from the security office, open a gate, and head towards the rest of the facility. I'm keeping an eye out for him. Fucking... Jesus Christ. Yeah, okay, this game is actually scary. I've danced around this for a bit now, but the game really does work hard to create that sense of paranoia in the player. Each costume you find is positioned in such a way that the Mimic could feasibly be hiding within any of them. And the fact that 99% of the time, the Mimic activates by you just simply walking past them makes it a genuinely horrifying threat. That is, until you wind up a mouse toy and chuck it to the other side of the room, triggering its ADHD and sending it running after the noise. Yet the Mimic is just laughably easy to deal with sometimes, and that combined with the fact that the Mimic just doesn't show up in some areas, and gets his shit rocked by doors constantly and loses sight of you very easily, makes it into a joke by like the midpoint of the game. Like, what is bro doing? You saw me get in here, open the door, dude. Now, I know the suggestion can't work due to another thing I'll get into shortly, but I feel that having the Mimic act as a sort of Mr. X type character who's constantly stalking the player throughout the map, getting hints as to where we are or where we frequent via sound, would have made them a much more interesting and engaging threat. Like, imagine you just walk into a room and at the corner of your eye, the costume stops moving, and you don't know if that was you imagining things or the Mimic, but you can feel its presence all around you. But I digress, I just think that'd be cool. We then go through an employee break area, seeing a drawing of David and the Mimic before heading up to the elevator to... Oh look, it's the fabled PAX demo! Yippee! You know, I'd almost forgotten this game was made as both flat screen and VR, but now I can't stop thinking about how incredible this game is gonna look and feel in VR, especially some later parts of the game. I just hope that gets here soon. Now, I'm assuming we all know what happens here. We steal a crank from Jackie's box, we walk towards the mailbot's room, crank a generator, and Jackie beats the shit out of the mailbot, prompting us to run away, and we find ourselves walking through the back rooms of the MCM as Jackie stalks us, having some admittedly really cool scenes where we engage in a very Poppy Playtime-esque chase scene, where we have to pull levers and close doors on Jackie as they follow behind, with the whole chase sequence culminating in Jackie cornering us in a vent as we're unable to move, before said vent gives way below us and we're sent tumbling back into the security office. Yeah, that's it for Jackie, by the way. I'm not kidding, this character was the star of all the marketing that was used in one 10-minute segment. That's it. There are multiple sections later in the game where it would have been feasible for the Mimic to adopt this costume and chase us again, and they just don't. Like, I don't know why. You made Jackie such an important character in the marketing and everything, and she's used once. Like, come on, Steelwolf. The chase sequence overall is really fun and tense, but I'm just a little disappointed in how Jackie was just thrown away after this, especially with how strong their design is. This entire segment also highlights one of the issues I alluded to earlier. Despite how it may look, the map isn't really interconnected. Like every other Steelwolf FNaF game, the map is split into chunks with loading areas placed between them to smooth out the transition. This is done for optimization and performance reasons, I get that, and in most cases it's barely noticeable. But there are a few that stick out like sore thumbs. Like, look at this. They could have just loaded these single rooms in and called it a day, but instead it's just a bunch of images with no depths, and it's not like the game is struggling to run or anything. They just decided to show rooms and have them as PNGs once again. This is just a pet peeve of mine and overall doesn't impact the experience that much, but it really just takes me out of the immersion, and I'm praying that this isn't the case for VR, and it could be why that's taking so long, because if it is an issue in VR, it will be 100 times more noticeable, and will probably be what most people talk about. Also, I did want to touch upon the jump scares in Secret of the Mimic, because I can't even sugarcoat it. They're bad. Like, really, really bad. Comparing these to Security Breach or Help Wanted jump scares, these are just not it. Jackie's jump scare puts you in a void, and most of the others have these weird looking backgrounds like it's not even happening in real time. It's just a huge downgrade on the visuals, and there's no reason why it was done. We know that a good chase jump scares can be done, just look at Popular Security Breach. We know that Steel will know how to do these jump scares and not have them feeling jarring or out of place. So why make the decision to have these jump scares take place in a void? It's just an odd creative choice I really can't get behind, no matter how much I like everything else in this game. Now that I think about it, this might be due to the game being VR as well as flat screen, but that's still no reason why they couldn't have just had these exact same jump scares happen in the area we're in and not a void. Regardless, we get to talk to Dispatch again. But instead of usual corporate talk, the audio seems glitchy and distorted, like it's being interfered with. Then it continues like nothing happened, with the dispatcher's voice sounding kind of odd, dropping the usual corporate tone and instead being more friendly with Arnold, which is weird for Fazbear, but we'll brush it off for now. We're then directed back to the showrooms, as our new permission allows us to restart the show and enter... I don't even know what to call this, a green room maybe? Still, we need to go into the back areas because the elevator is broken down. Since someone stuffed an elephant head into the gears, wonder who that could have been, Mimic? We also find another Miss Helpful here, which actually gives different dialogue options depending on the access levels we have. And I do recommend you go and visit these stations with executive permissions at the end of the game, because they actually have messages from Edwin and his wife Fiona to each other hidden within these stations. Which, speaking of lore, we can also find another body from Team 12 hidden away behind a locked gate. And I want to mention this for later, but all throughout the game there have been these mailboxes, which is basically the document system of this game, and it reveals so much lore that while this video won't really focus on the lore till like the end when I go through as my own personal interpretation, I still want to just point it out so you know for later. We then go back outside, avoid the Mimic using rats, find a cassette tape we need, and do one of my favorite minigames of all time, repairing an elevator. No, I'm not kidding, I fucking love this, only for the sole reason that failing causes the elevator to either squish Arnold, or just send us falling into the abyss like we're playing Ruin all over again. I don't know why, but I think it's absolutely hilarious that Arnold survives everything the Mimic throws at him, and then because he's sleep deprived, he just screws up to an elevator and gets crushed. Also, this puzzle, unlike most of the puzzles throughout the game, is actually very sparse and far between, making them all feel really fresh and interesting every time you encounter one, which is a nice change of pace from all the twist this and recharge the power. Once the lift is fixed, we can then head up to the showrooms and find the best characters in this game, the Cleanovacs. I'm sorry, I love these guys, I get it, I'm basic, let me enjoy petting the damn vacuum robot in peace, okay? We then do another power puzzle to reactivate the Big Top showroom, or as we all know him, Music Man! This section is comprised of 3 minigames, with 2 of them being the same Hit the Target game just reskinned, where you can actually take the gun with you for future use, so that's kinda cool. But my all-time favorite of these has to be the Jackie ball toss. Like, just look at these trick shots off the corner, like into another one, goddamn! But let's address the elephant in the room here. This thing tanks frames on recording softwares. At the time of recording this audio and footage, there have been no patches to the game, and nothing has really been said about this. I don't know if it's just my version of Secret of the Mimic, like everyone gets their own personalized copy of Security Breach. But there are a few segments in this game where the frames just tanked on the recording software, but while playing the game there was absolutely no issue, and I know for a fact it is just this room, because I went behind the ball toss into the secret Storytime showroom area, and the recording immediately went back to normal, so I have no clue what this issue could be. After we finish each minigame, the player is forced to run past a bunch of mannequins, and hide in lockers to avoid Music Man, before having to go back to the entrance and fix the power as it slowly drags itself towards you. You do this 3 times in a row, by the way, this is thrilling gameplay. Each time you succeed, however, you get a free spin on the prize wheel, where your last spin will get you the grand prize, and you get to go meet Music Man face to... and never mind. The Mimic just made him jump through the damn roof. But with nowhere else to go, we upgrade our data driver and head onto the roof to reach the staff offices. Is what I would say if Music Man didn't just pull a King Kong. Like, look at this shit. Mimic, chill, bro. I keep saying this, but in VR, this is gonna be absolutely horrifying. Still, Music Man forced us to race down a collapsing stairwell, and we barely avoid its arms as they block our paths at every turn, eventually leaving a hole that we can drop down and crawl our way into the lower levels, as the Mimic relentlessly slams their hands to block our paths. And just as we think we've escaped, these fucking mannequins decide to snitch on us again, as the Big Top once again begins pursuing, picking up mannequins and slamming them on our paths as it reaches for everything that makes noise, eventually cornering us in another stairwell as it slowly descends. Only this time, the Mimic falls victim to its own weight and loses its footing, sending us both crashing down. And Arnold has got to have legs of steel, bro. Like, how are you alive? Look at the state the Mimic left the Big Top in, and you're telling me Arnold just walks this off? Now, I think I've made this pretty clear, but I don't like the Big Top showroom. It's repetitive and it's boring. It does have that puzzle where you need to input codes depending on what hats the mannequins are wearing, so I'll give it props, that one was fun. But other than that, it's just do minigame, hide from Music Man, reset the power, and repeat 3 times. I will say, however, that the Big Top's design is really cool. I love how it uses its chest arms to drag itself slowly towards you, and I'm also a big fan of how that leaves the only place for the Mimic to be is in its head, piloting the Big Top like a bloody mech suit. Like, that's just a hilarious visual to me. Despite this, the chase scene that comes afterwards, while visually being an absolute spectacle, is kind of underwhelming from a gameplay and build-up standpoint. They, however short it was, spoiled us with Jackie being the first chase, and it felt that the Big Top just lacked that build-up that Jackie had, and all we were really doing here is run, get blocked by a massive arm, turn another way, and repeat. That's the whole chase. It's not bad in any regard, in fact while you're playing it, it's actually really fun, but compared to what came before, it's just not it. There are some really strong parts to it that outshine Jackie's chase though. As previously mentioned, the visual and animation work for this guy is stellar. Like, his entrance is absolute cinema. I have no notes on that. Wonderfully done, Mimic. Here, have a gold star. Having upgraded to creator access, we can now finally explore a few new areas of the factory. And while none of them are really that interesting, we do have the theater, which gives us our first look with Edwin and Fiona, who are actually the stars of the MCM tapes released in the lead up to Secret of the Mimic. Now, this is where I would have commented on what Dispatch says in the security room, if my ass remembered to go back there. The short version is that Dispatch acts like they have no clue what just went down, telling us they're doing a good job dealing with whatever it was, while Arnold begs for his life, telling Fazbear to send help immediately. Dispatch ignores him and instead sends us towards the warehouse to upgrade our data diver once more, to which Arnold obliges. The workshop is an area full of unfinished and damaged costumes at every turn, most of which feel very lifeless, a sharp contrast to the alive-feeling suits we've been seeing displayed all throughout the factory. The back area of this workshop holds 2 very important things. The first is an audio log where Edwin introduces David to the Mimic, and the second is a torso hanging in the center, which turns out to be the beginnings of a spring-lock suit, which Arnold needs to assemble and wear to reach the other side of the theater. So we spend the next 10 minutes sneaking past the Mimic, opening doors, and collecting parts to create Captain Springlock, who acts out like Glamrock Freddy in this section, with Arnold crawling into the chest and being able to control the suit, as we're lifted into another storage area, and the power quickly cuts out, with the Mimic giving us a little wave, seeing it's just another suit, or possibly another Mimic. And he's just so cute here, oh my god. Once power is restored, we go up once again and find another audio log, where Edwin laments about the fact that he has to raise David on his own after Fiona died in the Fall Fest fires. This area is very reminiscent of Backstage, where you need to go around shooting targets to lower a bridge and go up one more time to the theater, all while Edwin talks to investors and buyers for children's TV, where he says they won't need writers, directors, or puppeteers anymore, that his stage manager software will write shows themselves using character names, locations, and genre, only needing a director to interact with the show by shooting targets and progressing the story. Which totally isn't horrifyingly close to reality right now. Heading further into this area, we come face to face with someone unexpected. Yeah, I love this game so much. I'll talk about Tiger Rock in its own little section later on, but it is by far one of the most horrific things I've ever experienced in horror games, period. Like, oh, I cannot wait to talk about that. Once we finally have the bridge dropped, we can pilot Captain Springlock towards the theater, and we're placed up high, getting a view of an upgrade station just across from us, a crowd of mannequins, and the set of a pirate ship, where we learned that Foxy and Roxy were actually made by Edwin and Fiona. As the show goes on, the theater begins to collapse, sending both the player and the upgrade station tumbling into the void. When we awaken, we're face to face with a new character, Dolly, and honestly, pretty solid introduction. When I started playing the game, I was very indifferent about Dolly, but I just love her introduction. It feels so claustrophobic and personal, as Dolly talks about how this isn't Captain's first visit down here, and the person piloting is seen as a foreign object, which the only way to remove us is, you know, blending us up and scooping us out, or you know, just open the suit, Dolly? Yeah, I honestly thought we were gonna have like a sister location Night 4 situation on our hands, but apparently not, you just leave. This also reveals something about Edwin's spring locks, or more accurately, Fiona's spring locks, as after seeing the design from William and Henry, she was able to develop much stronger and safer spring locks compared to them. Oh yeah, and Edwin made recycling, can't forget about that. We then avoid Dolly as she travels along a track and eventually steal one of Mailbot's gears and open a door towards the animatronic hospital. But before we can go in, we see that Dolly has ripped herself off the track by removing her feet, showing that the Mimic is now in control, as she stumbles out from behind the pillar with new feet. Our goal here is to collect discarded metal and dump it into trash chutes. And honestly, this section kinda sucks, as you really can't see some of the trash that's hidden in these darker areas, and I hope that they either just move the trash into slightly lighter or more seeable areas, or just make them slightly more identifiable, because even after getting the other endings and replaying the game, I was still missing a few as I walked past. During this, we also upgrade our data diver once more, leaving us just one level away from executive permissions and getting out of here for good. And after dumping the last bit of trash, we open up the maintenance tunnels as Dolly chases close behind. She then drops down from a vent, and we send the trash we collected down towards her via a conveyor belt, causing her to stumble and eventually fall into a vat of molten metal. And that's it, guys. The game's smooth sailing from here, no more Mimic, no more problems, and holy shit, what the fuck? Dolly, now literally melting apart, and the Mimic, somehow unscathed, continue to chase us, blocking our path multiple times as we sneak past them, and we eventually find an elevator and barely close it in time. Just as we think we're home free, the elevator stops working when you repair it once again, and just as we fix that, the Mimic drops down on top of the elevator, and we're forced to repair it without any instructions this time. Eventually, we put the elevator on max speed and go flying towards the factory, as the Mimic rips itself out of Dolly in an insane scene. Like, I just love this, especially since our first look at the Mimic that's been chasing us this whole game, and it leaps away, disappearing into the tunnels. The suit is then slammed against the ceiling, and we're finally home free. But just as we go to leave, we can hear the Mimic above us repeating lines from Edwin. Now, this is my favorite part of the main game. My only issue with it is that ending chase against Dolly is entirely scripted. Like, very obviously so. This whole area where we're being chased by Molten Dolly feels like it should play out like every other section, with having the same AI as before it. But instead, it's the most obviously scripted part in the game, requiring the player to activate triggers, wait for her to walk by, and repeat. But that's the one negative I have in a sea of positives and cool as fuck moments. Like, I still can't get over how well animated the Mimic was just ripping itself out of Dolly, and how it gives us that little stare down before it jumps into nothingness. Returning to the security office, dispatch sends us towards the admin wing, as that's where Edwin's office is located, telling us that the fastest way there is through the warehouse. So we open the door, start another power puzzle, only this time there are 3 pieces scattered around the area, which, honestly, good evolution of the puzzle. I just wish it came much earlier than the halfway point of the game. But we need to locate these pieces while avoiding Chica? Yeah, this gives a whole new meaning to I Was the First, doesn't it, theorists? Still, nothing to write home about. We just fix up the power, do a very janky, very made for VR puzzle, and make our way towards the upper floors, and see Tiger Rock once more. Don't worry, buddy, I get to talk about you real soon, okay? Just wait, you are, oh my god. We then go down an elevator and through another gate to enter the admin wing, an office-type area filled with Chica's cupcakes, which are the funniest thing of all time. The way they look at you while you're hiding and back towards Chica over and over is hilarious. They're just sat there like, so are you gonna tell her or am I? It's just such a good thing. The only downside to their comedy is that they scream when you get too close, alerting Chica to your exact location. So, as mentioned previously, we need to sneak past Chica, which is easier said than done because her movement is insane. Like, you hide, she starts pursuing, starts roaming in one direction, you exit the locker, only for her to turn around the second you do and catch you. It's just an annoying mechanic and really weird, but that's also only made worse because there's no saving throughout this entire segment. So even if you grab the collectibles and messages, you'll need to relocate them all over again and hope you're not caught by Chica. It's a pain and removes a lot of the enjoyment this section has, but overall it's alright. Once that's all said and done, we can finally access the executive area. And it's here we actually learn that Fiona designed Chica for Chica's Party World. And we get a little commercial that would have been used in advertising for the restaurants, so at least we know something about Chica's Party World after nearly a decade, Jesus Christ. We then upgrade to executive permission, and with that in hand, we can enter Edwin's office, learning that up until he vanished, things weren't doing great. The Fazbear project was Edwin's last chance to get this company back on its feet, and while working on it, the company was only bleeding money. And we get a message from Miss Helpful just before entering Edwin's office with him lamenting that everyone's leaving and all their money is gone, hoping that Fiona can still somehow hear him and that once he finishes his work at Fazbear, everything will go back to normal. It's really sad, especially how passionate this man is about his creations, and what we're about to see next is so heartbreaking. Up in Edwin's office, we open a hidden doorway behind a bookshelf and access the Mimic's blueprints, downloading them into the data diver and slamming the door shut in the Mimic's face, with our only way out now being through basement 2, and we see a monitor of Tiger Rock stalking us. We then head below, open a door, and come face to face with the costume. Is it finally time? Here we go. This section is absolutely horrific. We're forced to navigate this pitch black area with nothing but randomly flickering lights to guide our paths, all while Tiger Rock silently stalks us. Its glowing eye is the only indication as to where it is, and even then, you don't always see its eyes. The sound design here is deafening, with only the occasional light booming being heard, or, more so, the haunting sounds of children laughing and screaming, mixed with the sounds of the Mimic and David's voice filling the void as Tiger Rock hunts us from behind, while we run from light to light, only to turn and find it right behind us. Sometimes you'll reach the safety of the light, only to see nothing. No eyes, no direction, just whispering filling the air. As you run, you can catch glimpses of its almost lifeless body, with Tiger Rock slumped, its head and arms dangling as it rushes towards you. Eventually, Arnold reaches the lever and opens the door, gaining a light source, but now he's forced to travel narrow hallways, as he has to leave the safety of the light to open doors with Tiger Rock stalking him once again. Every time you take your eyes off it and move, there is a risk that it appears just around the corner in front of you. Its head is locked to your every move, and it blocks paths, forcing you to find detours, with your only chance of safety from it being when a light randomly appears above its head, and even then, that safety is fleeting, as you have to use your time wisely to find where to go. But the real horror about this whole section is that there's just something about children in horror games that disturbs me to my very core. I should state now that the Tiger Rock is not only the Mimic here. We know this because it doesn't make the Mimic's usual clanky metal sounds. It's silent. It teleports and it acts almost like Golden Freddy. This isn't wholly the Mimic. While the Mimic is inside the suit, Tiger Rock is David's agony given form, his favorite toy, his favorite costume, chasing us through the lower levels, invisible, hidden in darkness, just how David must have felt, ignored by Edwin. We know this because throughout the game we continuously find tapes of Edwin who only wants to work on his inventions. That's the whole reason the Mimic exists, to look after David the way Fiona did. David was invisible to Edwin, and now he stalks us from the shadows, his voice echoing the sounds of children playing and laughing. I love this section because how ill it makes me feel. I hate this section with every fiber of my being, and that's why I love it. It lasts just long enough to be terrifying, without overstaying its welcome. It's the same reason I love House Beneviento in Resident Evil 6. While both sections differ widely in gameplay, they share the same horrific concept: a child becoming something monstrous and unknown. RE7's section explores Ethan's fears with his daughter, and Secret on Mimic about a child lashing out after being neglected. Eventually, we do escape and make our way once more to the security office. And this is where the game's story diverges into 3 separate endings, and I'll cover each of them individually, starting with the bad ending, or the ending that you get if you blindly follow Dispatch. In this ending, Fazbear congratulates Arnold for getting the M2 blueprints and escaping unharmed. However, their voice is dull and emotionless, but after everything we just went through, it doesn't really matter, as Arnold hands over the data driver and heads back to his truck, finally ready to clock out on his 40-hour shift. On your way out, however, the real Dispatch breaks through and says they've been trying to get a hold of Arnold all night. Arnold is confused and panicked, telling them that he gave them the data diver, but Fazbear isn't hearing any of it, threatening legal action and hanging up. We then hear a noise from behind us, and Arnold's van fills with an orange glow. Arnold takes a look in his rearview mirror to reveal that the Mimic is inside of his truck as it lunges at him. Arnold desperately tries to hold it off, but the Mimic grabs him and we awaken inside of a Freddy costume in a prototype Freddy's, surrounded by work-in-progress versions of Chica and Bonnie, as the Mimic watches us, reminiscent of what it did in the ending of Help Wanted. It's an interesting ending to be sure, but I'm tempted to say it's not the canon one, mainly because the ending you get if you don't hand over the data diver. See, since the beginning of the game, there was this option called parachute.exe that has been on only this security terminal, locked behind executive permissions. Activating it reveals a vent underneath the couch, with Dispatch's voice becoming stern and emotionless as Arnold travels underneath the factory. This is when the Mimic drops his persona, taunting Arnold as we crawl through tunnels of abandoned costumes. Dispatch ponders what costume it will take to hunt us, as we eventually make our way back to the welcome show and activate the goodbye show, revealing that the platform we've been standing on doubles as an elevator, and we head down as the lift begins to break and we need to flip levers to fix it. All while, the damaged Music Man begins hunting us from above, as parts of the walls and its body break apart and fall all around us. Eventually we make it to the bottom and the Mimic once again abandons the costume as we enter the R&D floor, and find that prototype Freddy's. Dispatch questions why we're even down here, telling us they tried their best to protect us and that we should have just given it what it wanted. We then activate power to the location, and Dispatch begins talking about how it followed us down here, and it will find us as we sneak around the Mimic wearing an amalgamation of parts from the Freddy's animatronics. This leads to us once again having to adopt the Springlock suits of a dog, a Proto-Monty, Proto-Spring Freddy, and Proto-Spring Bonnie, to sneak past the Mimic and drain Dispatch of its power, forcing it to let us into the FNaF 1 office, as it's revealed that Dispatch is actually not the Mimic that's been hunting us. That would be M2, a more advanced version of Mimic software that Edwin had been developing before his disappearance. Dispatch is the M1 program, which is mimicking Fiona and has been sealed in the Nexus machine, or as it's called here, F10N4. Fiona tells us that Edwin locked himself away and abandoned them, severing all communications and telling us to go to the house and reactivate those communications, so she can convince Edwin to fix M2. And if we don't, M2 will never stop hunting us, telling us to tell Edwin that despite everything, she still loves him, and she opens the door towards the house. Here we find a log from Fiona where she talks about David's death and how they can fix it, and that Edwin's already done it before. We then take a cart ride towards the Murray household, where we're told that the Fazbear project is over budget, his bank account is overdrawn, and he's been issued multiple court summons. Eventually, we find the Murray household, and here we need to collect a series of colored tapes that relate to a photo on a projector of David's name written on a blackboard, with each tape ending with a number. And these tapes, oh these tapes! Let's start with the green tape, as we see one of David's birthdays and Edwin and Fiona celebrating it. We see that Fiona made Roxy for him, as Edwin, while playing, accidentally scares David. The pink tape shows Fiona going upstairs to Edwin's office, telling him to come downstairs and join the party, as he rants about his inventions, missing the party and embarrassing Fiona in front of all of her friends. telling her that David's only turning 2 and he won't even remember this, as Fiona goes down to cut the cake without him. The blue tape takes place after Fiona's death, with David unable to process that his mother is gone, due to him only being 3 years old, crying as Edwin tries to comfort him, telling him to start opening his gifts and that he's gonna go to work, staring at a photo of his family. The red tape shows Edwin giving David a playset for his birthday, before we hear a distorted version of Fiona's voice, wishing him a happy birthday. Edwin tells Fiona to take over and make dinner and he's gonna go to work, as we see David's ball rolling into frame. The last and final tape shows an area we actually get to see in-game. It's a room in the admin building that's been left untouched so long that the cake has mold on it. We can find emails scattered around the factory that tell everyone to stay out of the admin wing while the party is being set up, and we're finally shown why. As Edwin and Fiona work to set up the party, it's revealed that Fiona, the M1 program, used to occupy the Mimic's current form. And when I say that my jaw was on the floor, I mean it. This was a massive reveal, and while I had thought about it over the course of watching these tapes, it still hit me like a truck of realization. Edwin must have sealed the M2 program away to open up the Mimic endoskeleton so he could attempt to bring David back using the M2 program. But as we learn from the admin wing and Edwin's office, the M2 program was being leaked by his employees to Fazbear, and he's completely unsure of why the M1 program even worked, as he desperately tries to bring his son back. And Fiona's not all innocent here either, as it was her idea to keep the Mimic programs a secret and hidden, even from all of their friends. Once we've viewed all the tapes, we can finally gain access to Edwin's room, where we find the model for a new and improved MCM, and see that Fiona has been sending Edwin messages with no reply. And we finally find out why. Edwin's room seems to have had an explosion, and an audio log in the room reveals that M2 was pretending to be Edwin, talking about a failed power attempt and cleanovac upgrades. All while Edwin weakly asks him for help in the background, asking M2 to call for help. But M2 responds dismissively, like a parent brushing off their child. And in a way, it's kinda poetic that Edwin is now on the other side of this conversation. But it's also terrifying that Edwin is laying there, his legs broken, presumably bleeding out due to the explosion, and M2, using his voice, is telling him to go along and play. And we also know that just before the Tiger Rock section, that Edwin beat M2 so much when it did try and mimic David, that it started mimicking Edwin's violent tendencies. Which makes me think that this explosion was not an accident at all. Accessing the terminal, we have 3 options. To access the security room, see alternative Fazbear designs or puppet designs, with the latter 2 sadly being redacted. Open up the security room, we run cradle.exe, which I don't even think we ever learn what that does. I've taken it as either an old version of the Mexis software made to contain a mimic, or a digital version of David being held in a metaphorical cradle. Still, we run the program, only for the mimic in its bare endo form to appear behind us. We try and close the door on it, but it picks it up, holding it open, as we're forced to run away, eventually hiding in an elevator, as the mimic tries to pry the door open. As it shuts, the mimic begins banging on the door, and Fiona begins to talk to M2 like it's Edwin, telling him to let go and fix M2, which makes no sense, but that's FNaF. She tells him that she just wants her child back, after having to watch him grow up through this machine, and that fixing M2 will bring David back to her, back to them. All of this is to no avail, however, as the mimic continues to chase Arnold, forcing us to crawl through crumbling tunnels, breaking down doors, and sending little baby mimic bots after us. Eventually, we get cornered by the mimic, but as it always goes, something collapses on top of it and we continue running, getting on the ride we took to the house as the tunnels continue to collapse around us, and we return to the factory, seeing it on fire, and the baby mimics continue to chase us as Arnold escapes outside the factory and sees Edwin's house burning down. Arnold attempts to shake off the bots as he drives, to no avail, with the mimic eventually appearing on the roof, smashing through the windshield, reaching for Arnold, as he begins driving erratically before crashing, with the mimic refusing to let go. Arnold then awakens engulfed in flames, as the mimic approaches him and lifts up the car, ignoring Arnold entirely and taking the data driver off of him before walking off, attaching the data driver to itself and leaving Arnold to die. And this, chat, is why I love the Mimic in this game. It's just so cool. It feels like a Terminator. All you can do is hold it off or run away. It's constantly breaking down doors and hunting you relentlessly, and that's really shown off here. While I do wish we got more glimpses of the Mimic during the main game, like if we just saw it swapping costumes or saw orange lights watching us from behind windows, it would have added so much more to the feeling of the Mimic stalking us. Now, I personally, along with most of the FNaF community, view this as the canon ending, with the Mimic walking away from a burning MCM, as we know from the books that Fazbear recovers stuff from MCM's wreckage. And this is the only ending where we see the Mimic actually leaving MCM, and not bringing us back to the prototype Freddy's, or as the secret ending goes, shutting down. Speaking of the secret ending, it's pretty similar to the parachute one except a few differences. First off, you need to find all the collectibles, which is impossible in a normal game, and is why you need to beat the game in New Game Plus, which gives you the White Tiger plushie. This ending also involves you meeting an older version of the Moon animatronic as well, which according to 2 emails, says that someone trapped something down there, and that someone was trapped below in the MCM to starve, which seems to lead me towards this being the first possession of the series, which is interesting to say the least. We then go through the Moon.exe game, which I haven't brought up at all up until this point because it really only relates to this ending. Here we see the Murray family represented by different entities, with the Moon representing Edwin, the baby owl representing David, and the sun in the woods representing Fiona. Throughout the game, we sneak out of the house and use collectibles we find to solve puzzles. Using these collectibles, we free the baby owl from the jaws of an alligator and follow it to a cabin, where we help the sun fix Foxy, Bonnie, and Freddy. Once we do that, we're handed an owl mask, which we use to trick the Moon into thinking we are the baby owl, causing the Moon to weep, and in doing so allows us to enter the cave. Inside the cave, we build a Moon statue, and everything cuts to white, before we awaken to Mr. Helpful, telling us we have rebuilt ourselves. We are both sun and moon, destruction and life. I interpret this as us playing as the Mimic endoskeleton, not M1, not M2, just the endo. Mr. Helpful then hands us a Fall Fest ticket. Heading forward, we steal Jackie away in rain boots, give the ticket to the Big Top, repair a duck and elephant using a doctor's kit, which then sends Dolly away, and reunite Chica with her cupcake, allowing us to access a child's bedroom. Here, we put 3 items that relate to David in these chests. David's ball in the moon, a toy that reveals his name in the stars, and the White Tiger plushie in the snow, which reveals an upgrade terminal. Once done successfully, this allows us to talk to Fiona, who tells us to bring David back to her, as she provides us with glitch permissions, allowing us to access hidden rooms in Edwin's house, each of which containing an audio file for a bedroom story, and when all 6 parts are put together, it opens a vent leading towards a bedroom, which should be familiar to all of us FNaF fans. Bringing the tiger plushie here begins a bedtime segment, with Edwin and Fiona telling a story while the Mimic hides in the closet. Once David's name is said, the Mimic begins to shrink down and its eyes become blue as he exits the closet. We then need to tell a story by hitting the right buttons at the right times before the Mimic can reach us. This story appears to be randomized from every gameplay I saw, but they all tell the same story, where the animals learn that anger doesn't solve anything, and the Mimic begins glitching before revealing a slot for a data diver. Here, we upload the M2 schematics and fix the Mimic, turning them back into David as it happily walks off to the bed holding the Tiger Rock plushie, with its last words being,
"Your parents love you. Sleep tight."
Bloody hell, this game is intense. This ending makes me so sad, man. It's not even funny. This may be the best FNaF game of all time. But first, what the hell happened here? Going off from what I presume to be the canon ending and every bit of lore I found throughout the game, here's what I understand. Edwin took over MCM after his father died, and began to create his own inventions with the help of his wife, Fiona. Edwin would manage the business and inventing side of the company, while Fiona would handle public relations and costume creation. And for a while, they were massively successful. And during this time, they had a child named David. Eventually, Fiona would make Chica for Chica's Party World and Foxy for Edwin's show. During this time, Edwin would also take the Fazbear job, with Fiona making the new and improved spring locks, and Edwin hard at work creating Fredbear and Spring Bonnie. However, their marriage during this time would become rocky, as Edwin just wanted to pour himself into his work and create, while Fiona wanted their son to have both of his parental figures in his life. And sadly, sometime after David's second birthday, Fiona was killed in the Fall Fest fires, leaving Edwin and David unable to cope with her death. This would lead Edwin to desperately work on M1 to bring her back, and eventually, he succeeded. He didn't know how or why, but he had brought his wife back from the dead, and for a while, they were happy. But at some point around David's 5th birthday, he would be hit by a car and die. This is where the MCM would begin to go downhill. They were bleeding money as Edwin desperately worked to create M2, as employees would begin leaking information to Fazbear, planning to jump ship. All while Edwin was pressured by William and Henry to constantly change things at final moments, or create new things for them. And this added stress is what caused Edwin to lash out at M2. And at some point he would seal Fiona away, but his aggression towards M2 would cause it to lash out, eventually causing the explosion and leaving Edwin to die, with Fiona having no clue as to what happened to her husband. After hearing nothing for a while, Fazbear would send technicians to recover the leaked M2 blueprints they were told about and any other assets they could find, leading to Arnold successfully getting those blueprints but being killed by the Mimic, who is eventually recaptured and later sealed underground in ruin, with Fazbear adopting a lot of Edwin's tech. And that was Secret of the Mimic, which is probably the best FNaF game I have ever played, period. The factory is such a fun and interesting area to have this all take place in. The story and characters are actually really well explained and presented in clear ways, at least a lot more so than previous FNaF games, making it a lot more accessible and easier to understand for fans who don't really know a lot about extended media or the current lore. The gameplay is engaging, and I found myself constantly looking for any nooks and crannies or any new mailboxes I could find, and I apparently still haven't found them all after 3 playthroughs. So you know, there's still a lot more this game has to offer, and I will probably be sitting down and 100%ing this game after I finish this video. Visually and gameplay wise, I've seen a lot of people comparing this to Poppy Playtime, or just calling it an outright ripoff, which... what are you smoking and can I have some? Because that is a very insane thing to say. Secret of the Mimic has been in development around 2022 according to the Dalko interview, and keep in mind at that point we only had Poppy Chapter 2. So like, while yes, they do some similar things, that's because they're both stylized in a semi-cartoonish realism way. You could feasibly see both Poppy's factory and the MCM existing in the real world. And yet they retain that element of, oh yeah, these are games about children's entertainers and toys trying to kill people. Speaking of Steelwool, I think you've peaked when it comes to character design, guys. Everything here is so visually pleasing. Well, except you. I don't like you. The story told throughout Secret of the Mimic's 5 to 7 hour runtime is so interesting and had me on the edge of my seat every time I collected a log from Fiona reaching out to Edwin, or a factory worker not knowing what's going on, or even logs from previous teams who were killed by the Mimic. Secret of the Mimic had some fantastic scenes of horror, from the canon-ending chase that actually had me panicking at some points, to the previously gushed over Tiger Rock segment, which I know there's someone out there who can probably make an entire dedicated video about that. This segment has so much to talk about when you really go in depth into it. Also, this may be the first time other than Security Breach's release where I've played a Steelwool FNaF game and encountered no bugs. No clue how I managed to do that with release Security Breach, but Secret of the Mimic, outside being laggy on recording softwares, had literally 0 bugs. TLDR, I love this game. Is it worth more than Security Breach? Probably not, buy it on sale. But it's still a fantastic game that I do recommend you play at some point. What it lacks in really engaging gameplay, Secret of the Mimic makes up for in lore and horror. Most of the time at least. Let's just pray that whatever Steelwool cooks up next is as good, if not better, than Secret of the Mimic. Because you can see the improvements across all 4 of their games, and I cannot wait for what comes next. And with that said, I've been Core, and I'll see you in whatever I make next. Bye bye!